So we are 2 weeks into the 2025 NFL season, and we're kind of starting to figure out identities of these teams. Are they going to be contenders? Are they going to be sellers at one point? Are they just flat out rebuilding? So for today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys 15 NFL players that could be traded this season. The trade deadline will be on November 4th, so we'll have 6 or so more weeks to really figure out if these guys are going to get moved or not. There is the extra caveat when it comes to NFL trades that these teams sending out these players can still take a cap hit, which can hinder their idea to just trade these guys or maybe just cut them in the offseason. And I'm going to start off with DJ Moore of the Chicago Bears. And the Bears are off to maybe the worst start that you can imagine as a Bears fan. They blew that week 1 Monday night loss to the Minnesota Vikings, and then they lost week 2 by 30-ish points against the Detroit Lions, Ben Johnson's former team. I would say on the bright side, Caleb Williams has shown some promise this year. Rome Odunze after week 2 looks like he's ready to be the wide receiver 1 for this team. So I think that kind of leaves DJ Moore in a weird spot. DJ Moore has been here since the 2023 season, where he had a really good year with Justin Fields, but last year in a healthy season, which DJ Moore has been healthy every year since 2021, which is a big plus for a team trying to go out and trade for him. He only had 966 yards. Now, they drafted Rome Odunze in the top 10. They just drafted Luther Burden in the second round and Colston Loveland in the first round. There's just so many mouths to feed in Chicago. And if they're not even going to be a playoff team, they may try to get a day 2 pick for him this year at the deadline, because he's had seasons with some bad quarterback play in Carolina, with Justin Fields in 2023, where he could be a wide receiver 1 in this league still. And he's already been linked in trade rumors so far this season. He's still owed around $23 million in 2026 and $23 million in 2027. So there really isn't a potential out until the 2028 season, where the Bears would only take around $4 million in dead cap. It would be a massive dead cap number right now if they were to trade him, but it would get a little bit easier after the year. And they still have Caleb Williams under this rookie contract. So they're going to have a bunch of flexibility to still build around this roster. Moore is 28 years old. He signed that 4-year, $110 million extension with the Bears. Back in the 2024 offseason, he was obviously involved in that big trade in which the Bears traded down from 1 to 9 in the 2023 draft for Carolina to go up and get Bryce Young. This trade has still worked out more for the Chicago Bears, in my opinion. I wonder if we are getting to a breaking point for DJ Moore, who kind of showed at times last year he was not interested in what Chicago was doing. And if Caleb continues to feed Rome and DJ Moore turns into a wide receiver 2, I think he may ask out sooner than later. There has been a rumor that this player could get traded for DJ Moore, and maybe it would make some sense. That would be Kavon Thibodeau from the New York Giants. There was a thought that he could get traded in the offseason, since the Giants drafted somebody at the same position in Abdul Carter with the 3rd overall pick in the 2025 draft. Kavon Thibodeau was the 5th overall pick back in the 2022 draft. It was the infamous 2 top 10 picks where they took Kavon Thibodeau and they ended up taking Evan Neal. Thibodeau has been fine. He hasn't been a bust by any means. He's been a good edge rusher, maybe not a great one. Never really entered into that top tier of edge rushers with guys like Max Crosby, TJ Watt, somebody else that we're going to mention in this video. And he's gotten off to a fine start this year, and I was really excited to watch the Giants defensive line with Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence, Abdul Carter, and Kavon Thibodeau. I just don't feel like they need Kavon right now. And the Giants picked up his 5th-year option, so he will be under contract for the 2026 NFL season. And I think a team could probably buy low on Kavon Thibodeau right now. Maybe it's a 3rd rounder, maybe it's a 4th rounder, maybe it's a 5th rounder, just because he's more of a rotational guy in New York. And since they just drafted Abdul 3rd overall, who has a higher ceiling than Kavon, since they're already paying Brian Burns a ton of money, it would just make sense for the Giants to move on from Kavon Thibodeau to look to add to maybe the secondary, because it hasn't been a good start to the season for that unit right now. Speaking of the New York Giants, let's talk about Russell Wilson, who had a monster game for the G-Men in week number 2, where he almost led them to a victory on the road against the Dallas Cowboys. He threw for 450 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. He had a great go-ahead touchdown late in the game to Malik Neighbors, beautiful balls to Wan'Dale Robinson as well, but then he also just threw a mind-boggling interception late in that game when it could have sealed the deal for the G-Men. So you're going to get the good, you're going to get the bad with Russell Wilson, but it could make sense for the Giants to move on from him if they realize maybe we're not going to be a playoff team this year. We have Jameis Winston, who you could mention in this video, but he's a fine enough backup, and we want to roll Jackson Dart out there. And could we get something for Russell Wilson, who's only got a cap hit of $11 million, and that would be the dead cap if they traded him? The Giants can more than absorb that if they can get some type of day 2, day 3 pick for the veteran quarterback, since he just has a base salary of $2 million this year. There's some escalators that can get it up as well. But hey, if the Giants are maybe like 2-7 at one point, maybe they're 3-6, and they're like, you know what, we're getting calls for Russell Wilson. Maybe a team like the Cincinnati Bengals want to get somebody to help them down the stretch, and they want to look to add some competition with Jake Browning. Maybe a team like the Minnesota Vikings think they have a Super Bowl contending roster right now, but they don't think JJ McCarthy can put them over the hump. He could sit behind Russell Wilson if Carson Wentz doesn't work out in his spot start later this week. So it's maybe a wait and see for the quarterback trade market. Like Cincinnati already could be a team, but Jake Browning looks like he could be serviceable enough. So I'm not sure if they're going to view that as a massive upgrade or an upgrade in general. So it's a wait and see, but it would make sense for the Giants to field offers for Russell Wilson if they are just out of it in a few weeks. And another quarterback that I do want to talk about, Kirk Cousins of the Atlanta Falcons. He's currently the backup to Michael Penix in Atlanta. Kirk Cousins and the Falcons do have an out after the 2026 season where you would only absorb $45 million in dead cap. It's a lot easier to move Kirk Cousins now than it was in the offseason, but you still will take a financial hit. But I think if they pay down a little bit of the contract, it could make sense for a team to acquire him. But it's tough though, because Kirk Cousins wasn't great last year. He hasn't started this year. We haven't seen Kirk Cousins play football in a little bit, and he's getting up there in age as well. He is 37 years old. But when I talked about Russell Wilson before, if there was a QB injury like we saw with Joe Burrow in Cincinnati, what if a contending team that, I just don't want to put it out there, loses their quarterback for maybe the season? Could they go out and try to get a Kirk Cousins? Could there be a reunion of Kirk Cousins in Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell if they think, you know what, JJ just isn't ready, but Brian Flores has this as a Super Bowl level defense? We have a wide receiver 1 in J-Jeff. We have a wide receiver 2 in Addison. We have a good tight end. We have an improved offensive line, which hasn't been great so far this year with the Darisaw injury, and we added Jordan Mason in the offseason. Maybe they think they could still win the Super Bowl this year, just not with JJ McCarthy. Who knows? Could we see a reunion of Kirk Cousins in Minnesota? I'm not sure if the odds financially will let that happen, but I will just have to put Kirk Cousins' name out there since he's still a veteran quarterback that is better than some of these quarterbacks that are trotting out there every Sunday. But it's just, does the team want to take the risk, give up maybe draft capital? Maybe it's nothing right now for Atlanta just to get him off their roster, so it may be for the cheap. So I'm recording this ahead of the Thursday night matchup between the Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins are double-digit underdogs in this game, so if they do lose to Buffalo, which, you know, a team Tua can't really beat, they're going to start 0-3 this year, and I think there has to be a talk about trading away Tyreek Hill this year at the deadline. They have a potential out after this season where you only would absorb $15 million in dead cap. So do they want to take a massive dead cap hit at the deadline or just cut him in the offseason? Something we saw with Cooper Kupp last year and the Rams, and they waived him in the offseason. Tyreek Hill at one point a couple years ago was the best receiver in the league. He had basically 1,800 receiving yards, 13 touchdowns in 16 games in the 2023 season, where he ended up being on All-Pro First Team, 6th in MVP voting, and runner-up in Offensive Player of the Year voting as well. He was fine last year, but not for Tyreek Hill standards, given what he was from 2020 to 2023. It feels like Mike McDaniel has maybe lost this locker room, and you are already paying Jalen Waddle a ton of money right now. Maybe Tyreek just doesn't want to catch balls from Tua anymore, and I'm sure there are plenty of teams that would want to go out there and acquire Tyreek Hill. One would just be his old team in the Kansas City Chiefs. I know they're getting back Xavier Worthy soon and eventually Rashee Rice, so maybe they don't think they need a Tyreek Hill, but why not at this point? They're 0-2. Their offense can't get down the field whatsoever, and they just look like a fraction of what they used to just a few years ago, where Patrick Mahomes was a perennial MVP candidate. Could the Pittsburgh Steelers want to add another receiver? Could the New England Patriots try to add another receiver around Drake May? I mean, it won't happen financially, but the Baltimore Ravens would be sick. The Washington Commanders would be sick as well. Maybe the Arizona Cardinals think they can make an all-in move. I don't think the Green Bay Packers can work it financially after the Micah Parsons trades, but there would be plenty of suitors for Tyreek Hill if the Dolphins made him available at the deadline, and he could be the best player that could realistically get traded. My next player is more of just a change of scenery. We've seen it work out with Ryan Tannehill in the past, Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, Sam Darnold, and now Daniel Jones. And with Daniel Jones' emergence through the first 2 weeks, could the Colts, who can realistically win this division, look to trade away Anthony Richardson and get a better backup quarterback behind Daniel Jones? Because right now he is the backup quarterback with Riley Leonard being the third stringer, and you just have to completely change your offensive game plan with Anthony Richardson under center compared to Daniel Jones. And we just probably needed to see Daniel Jones in a change of scenery and him out of New York, because this looks like a completely different quarterback who can actually be something in Indianapolis. And even if the Colts go like 9-8 this year, but Jones looks like he could be the guy, they're going to sign him in the offseason. They're not going to do what the Minnesota Vikings did last offseason, where they let Sam Darnold walk and they went with JJ McCarthy. No, they would extend Daniel Jones this offseason, like we've seen in the past with Baker Mayfield, or even like Jordan Love, because of 1 year of improved quarterback play. So could a team call for Anthony Richardson? I'm not sure if we'd see him play this season, but what if a team that's kind of out of it could look to take a flyer on him? What if like the Raiders spiral a little bit? What if the Saints or the Panthers spiral a little bit as well? Or maybe the Cleveland Browns, or maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers think that he could be the guy after Aaron Rodgers. I do think there'd be plenty of suitors for Anthony Richardson, and I do wonder if the Colts would trade him now, or that would just happen in the offseason after they extend Daniel Jones, if he gets on that way to having an improved season and the Colts want to pay him big time money in the 2026 offseason. I mean, the Bengals are 2-0 right now, so maybe they don't sell. They did beat the Browns in week 1. It wasn't pretty. They beat the Jaguars in week number 2, and Jake Browning looked like he did a couple years ago when Joe Burrow missed a significant amount of time. And maybe he could be the guy in Cincinnati, but if they kind of teeter a little bit, which I still expect Baltimore to win this division, it's going to be tough with all 4 AFC West teams trying to make the playoffs. You have a couple out of the AFC East. You also have the Steelers, and whatever happens in the South for the Bengals to officially make it. Since Joe Burrow is going to be out to mid to late December, could they trade away Trey Hendrickson, somebody they didn't trade in the offseason? They gave him a 1-year extension. I didn't love the deal for Trey Hendrickson when it happened. He's essentially making $29 million this year and has a $25 million cap. It is a very large number, but he didn't get that long-term deal. He didn't get that guaranteed money he held out for in the offseason, or at least wanted, that Cincinnati wasn't willing to give him. So could a team look to trade a highly valued second rounder? Could we see him get traded for a first rounder this year at the deadline if the Bengals continue to slide? Because like I said, they're 2-0. They could definitely be in the hunt when Joe Burrow returns. It's not like they have the hardest schedule in the world, and Jake Browning looks like he could be serviceable enough as a quarterback, but say they're under 500 at the deadline, I'm sure plenty of teams would be calling for Trey Hendrickson, and the Bengals may look to reset in some way in the offseason. So my next player is going to be of the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm going to talk about Brian Thomas Jr. Now, I'm just kidding, but the vibes have been weird with BTJ in Jacksonville so far. I'm going to talk about Travis Etienne. So they already traded away Tank Bigsby to the Philadelphia Eagles. I think they're all the way in on Bashal Tutin. Could maybe Jacksonville sell high on Travis Etienne? Because if they were going to trade him last offseason, maybe he would go for a 5th, a 6th, or a 7th, given how disappointing he was in the 2024 season. Now, Etienne is off to a good start here in 2025, and the Jaguars did pick up Travis Etienne's 5th-year option, so he's under contract for next year as well. But yeah, could they try to sell high this year at the deadline? I don't think they would trade him within the division, but the Houston Texans need a running back. The Kansas City Chiefs could definitely use a running back because Isaiah Pacheco has been very disappointing since he came back from that major injury last year. The Washington Commanders lost Austin Eckler for the year. Could they look to get involved in the Etienne sweepstakes if he were to be made available? Aaron Jones is going to be out for a little bit. Could Minnesota get involved? Maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers would want to get involved as well. I think there would be some market for Etienne, like it is for a couple of the other guys that we talked about. The Jaguars would have to be under 500 at the deadline to probably sell off from Etienne, and they have a realistic chance at making the playoffs. They'll probably hold on to him till at least the offseason. Also, back on Etienne, he can be a free agent at the end of the year. I just forget that he didn't play at all as a rookie because of the torn ACL. Let's go back to the Chicago Bears. I talked about DJ Moore because they have Rome Odunze and Luther Burden. Could they also trade away Cole Kmet this year as well, since they drafted Colston Loveland in the 2025 class in the first round? Now, Kmet does have an out after this year for $3.2 million. He's making up basically 4% of the team's total cap space, and they would take a far less cap hit if they moved Kmet this year than if they moved DJ Moore. Kmet in the first 2 weeks has 6 targets, 3 catches for 60 yards. And the tight ends haven't gotten a ton of looks in Chicago, but yeah, Colston Loveland had 2 targets in week 1, 2 catches for 12 yards, 1 target in week 2, 0 catches, 0 yards. And I just want to see Colston Loveland get more involved, like the player he was at Michigan. Have Odunze, Burden, and Loveland be your trio of pass catchers going forward. I should have even mentioned Chicago as a team that can go out and get Travis Etienne, because I'm not sure if I'm sold on DeAndre Swift here in Chicago. I feel like I've been saying that in every destination Swift has been in Philly, where he probably had his most exciting year, or Detroit, where he was a highly drafted running back coming out of Georgia. But yeah, I could see Chicago parting ways with their tight end that has been there for a little bit now, since they got the new name in Colston Loveland. They could save a little bit of money long term and just open up the offense a little bit more. This is going to be my 10th name mentioned, and I'm going to cheat a little bit here. I'm going to go with an offensive line duo in Cleveland. I'm going to talk about Joel Bitonio, and I'm going to talk about Wyatt Teller, 2 players that are going to be free agents at the end of the year. And both of them are off to great starts this year. They looked healthy. They looked fresh in the first 2 weeks. So this would be if Cleveland craters, but both of them are getting up there in age as well. Joel Bitonio is going to be 34 in October, and Wyatt Teller is going to be 31 in November. So these guys are getting a little bit older. They could end up leaving the Browns in the offseason anyway. We've seen offensive linemen get traded at the deadline. Now, it is really hard to replace, and you need to have some solid offensive line unit out there at some point this year where your quarterback's going to get killed, you're going to have no running game, and nothing is going to transpire offensively, and the Browns need all the offensive development they can get. So they probably have to be blown away with an offer. I'm sure they want to try to be better and contend in a way in 2026, or at least be in the playoff picture. But yeah, just that Bitonio and Teller are going to be free agents at the end of the year. It would make sense for Cleveland to listen, and if these guys are going to be playing at this high level, if the Browns have like one win at the trade deadline, it would be silly for them just not to listen if a team is willing to overpay for 2 expiring offensive line free agents. Let's stay on Cleveland, and let's talk about our second tight end mentioned after Cole Kmet. We're going to talk about David Njoku, who also has an out at some point after this year. He could technically be a free agent in 2026 as well. It's all void money right now. And the Browns drafted Harold Fannin in the 2024 draft out of Bowling Green in the 3rd round. And Fannin had 9 targets in week number 1, 7 catches for 63 yards, and 5 targets for 5 catches and 48 yards in week number 2 against Baltimore. He's up there with Tyler Warren, who was drafted in the 1st round with all these targets for a rookie tight end. I talked about how Colston Lovewood needs more targets. Harold Fannin has been getting the job done right away for a day 2 pick. Now, David Njoku, 3 catches, 37 yards in week 1, 4 catches, 40 yards in week 2, but he's 29 years old. You're going to have Harold Fannin make a fraction of what Njoku would make going forward. It would make sense to trade Njoku this year. Maybe you can get a 4th rounder. Maybe you can get a 5th rounder or multiple of them. Maybe it's something better than that. We don't really see big tight end trades at the deadline. We've seen TJ Hawkinson in the past. That was probably the biggest one, but plenty of teams could be looking for a tight end out there. The Jaguars, the Texans, the Chargers. Heck, maybe the Chiefs could look for it as well, because I feel like Travis Kelce may be washed a little bit. Maybe Tampa Bay, maybe San Francisco with the George Kittle injury as well could look to acquire another tight end. Now, this player would have to get traded if the team starts to slot a little bit, because they did have playoff aspirations going into the year. It felt like a new vibe over there in Vegas with Tom Brady, with Chip Kelly, Pete Carroll, Geno Smith, all in the mix. We know they have their top target in Brock Bowers, but could they trade away Jakobi Myers, who did request a trade before the season started, but that wasn't taken seriously by Vegas. He wanted a new extension, and honestly, deservingly so. For the last few years, Jakobi Myers has been one of the more, if not the most underrated wide receiver in the NFL. He had over 1,000 yards last year with terrible QB play. He hasn't really had good QB play for most of his career. Geno Smith is definitely the best quarterback he has ever had. It's been Mac Jones, Cam Newton, whatever Vegas put out there last year. And like a lot of these guys that we talked about, Jakobi Myers is going to be a free agent at the end of this year. Myers is 28 years old and would definitely get a multi-year deal. We saw Gabe Davis get $40 million from the Jaguars a couple off seasons ago. He probably won't get Calvin Ridley money, but he can get close to that, given that Jakobi Myers has had the production with poor QB play. So this would be if Vegas is out of it at the trade deadline and maybe gets a nice offer for him in November. So when you look at PFF's top graded linebackers that have played over 100 snaps so far, no surprise at number 1, it's Fred Warner. He's the consensus best inside linebacker in the NFL. You know who's number 2? Demario Davis of the New Orleans Saints. You know how old Demario Davis is? He's 36 years old. He should not be in the Saints' future plans whatsoever, but he's been playing very well so far this year against the Cardinals and against the San Francisco 49ers. And you guessed it, Demario Davis is a free agent at the end of the year at 36 years old. I don't care what the Saints get offered. It could be a 5th rounder. You gotta trade him. I know he's a good veteran in the locker room. He's been in New Orleans forever now, but for a team that is probably not going to make the playoffs this year, that's probably not even going to make the playoffs next year unless things drastically change, you should try to capitalize on Demario Davis's top end play this year. He needs to play at this level for a little bit longer, but teams would be okay taking in a veteran linebacker at the deadline for sure. Plenty of teams could use another linebacker, and maybe they would overpay a little bit for Demario Davis if you can give them one elite season, especially for a playoff run. The second and last player we're going to talk about is everybody's favorite fantasy tight end, Kyle Pitts of the Atlanta Falcons. And the Atlanta Falcons did pick up his 5th-year option going into this year. It does feel like Kyle Pitts has had a disappointing season after a 1,000-yard receiving season as a rookie. Michael Penix has fed him the ball a little bit so far this year. 8 targets, 7 catches, 59 yards in week number 1. He had 5 targets, 4 catches, 37 yards in week number 2. And Pitts is still a freak athlete. There's a reason why he was selected 4th overall, and that athleticism is still there. It's a 1-year deal. He could definitely get traded, and Atlanta really wouldn't feel that cap hit whatsoever. So maybe they can get something for somebody that may not even re-sign with them when the season is over. But once again, this would have to transpire if Atlanta slides a little bit and is under 500 at the deadline. And the last player we're going to talk about, Breece Hall of the New York Jets. Breece Hall could have gotten traded in the offseason. It looked like we were heading that way. It looked like he could have got traded in training camp, but that didn't happen. This is year 4 of Breece Hall, who was the 36th overall pick in the 2022 draft. And Breece Hall can also be a free agent at the end of the year. The Jets are off to an 0-2 start. They have the Bucs this weekend, so they could be off to an 0-3 start. And Justin Fields has already gotten injured. Their offense was very disappointing in week number 2, but it was really exciting in week number 1 against the Pittsburgh Steelers, in which Breece Hall looked way better in week number 1 than week number 2. If they can get anything for Breece Hall at some point this year, they should probably take it if they're going to go all in on Braylon Allen or a new name in the offseason for the 2026 regular season. I talked about a ton of teams that can go after ETN. I think Breece Hall could be made available and a little bit more realistic to get traded, given that the Jets probably not going to be as good as the Jaguars this year. And unlike ETN, Hall is a free agent at the end of the season. So yeah, that is going to be for me. I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you think one of these 15 players is not going to get moved, let me know down below. Maybe there's somebody that I didn't mention that you think is going to get traded. Let me know down below as well. Make sure you're subscribed for NFL content like this all season long, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.